On this episode of Repair Geek, how to run an airline in your shop. Alright, so if you're looking at putting an air system into your shop, there are all sorts of options out there, whether it's just stapling a piece of hose to the wall, black pipe, galvanized pipe, aluminum piping, copper, PEX, or PVC. I'm going to tell you right now, don't use PVC. It doesn't handle UV light very well, and it will degrade over time, and there's a possibility that it will basically explode, come apart. So it's not OSHAA approved. I don't recommend it. A lot of people I know out there use it and say there's no issue with it, but why chance it? So I really was only considering black pipe, galvanized pipe, an aluminum kit, or copper. The issue with black pipe and galvanized pipe is you have to thread it, which I don't own a threader, so I would have to go get or rent a threader. And the other issue is rust and corrosion. Any sort of moisture that goes through your system will rust the inside of that pipe, and it's going to get hopefully trapped by your filters and not go through your tool or into your paint job or whatever you're doing. So I wasn't really looking at black pipe or galvanized pipe for those reasons. The other option you guys have is PEX. I didn't really look into PEX simply because you kind of have to run it inside the wall, because I think the UV light, kind of like PVC, degrades it over time. The difference is when PEX pipe basically lets go, it doesn't explode like PVC. It just kind of splits and then you have a leak. So you have to run it inside the wall, and for that reason, I didn't really consider it, because if I bought a new tool or something and I needed another air drop, I couldn't modify the system for that tool or item or whatever. So that's a cheap route if you guys want to go that way. I've seen people do it. Whether or not it's actually, rated for air pressure, I don't know, but it's something worth considering if you don't have any drywall up in your shop or anything like that. So that really only left me with two real options: aluminum or copper. And what I did was there's a company called Rapid Air that is pretty widely available to most consumers. And I went and I started looking at one of their kits. Well, one of their kits typically comes with like 100-foot of hose or 100-foot of tubing. Well, I only needed about 60. The other thing was they didn't have nearly the amount of fittings that I needed, and the fittings are between $15 and $25 a piece. So what I ended up doing was I priced it out using 3/4 copper pipe, and I found that it was quite a bit cheaper than running aluminum. So I have all the advantages of an aluminum kit, like no rust or corrosion, easy to modify, and simple install. And it cost me, I think it was like $100 cheaper than a Maxline kit. I looked at a fast pipe kit, which is a rigid aluminum piping kit, and it was well over $500 just to do my little run that I have here. Full disclosure, I spent about $250 on my system. Now that's without any filters, regulators, hose reels, things like that. There's so many different ones out there that I'm not even going to begin to get into that kind of stuff. I'm just strictly focused on the airline and the fittings and the clamps and the brackets and things like that. I'm not going to get into end of use items like filters, hoses, fittings, things like that. So yes, copper is expensive, but because of my run and the way my system's set up, it was much cheaper for me to run copper than it was aluminum. Let me bring you over to the bench and I'll show you exactly what I'm going to be putting up. As I just told you, I'm going to be running copper pipe. The majority of the pipe that I'm going to be using is type M. There's also type L, that it has a much thicker wall. I did buy one stick of type L because I have one small section that's going to be lower to the floor, and in case it got bumped or anything like that, I figured it would hold up better. Got my pipe. I have multiple Sharkbite fittings here. I'm going to be using basically plumbing clamps to mount everything to the wall. Anywhere where I need air, I'm just going to sweat on a MPT end to the standard 3/4 copper pipe and push it into a Sharkbite fitting and be done. The Sharkbite fittings are, according to Sharkbite, are good to 200 PSI and 200 degrees. I looked at a Transair aluminum kit, and honestly, the specs on these Sharkbite fittings were better than the Transair kit, believe it or not. So the fittings are cheaper, the pipe may not be cheaper, but like I said, with all my twists and turns, it was far cheaper for me to go this route. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put the system in, and I'll bring you guys back once I get the system in, just so you can see, you know, how I did things and why I did things the way I did them. Personally, I don't think there's much of a benefit for you guys to sit there and watch me put my entire system up, because your system isn't going to be identical to mine. Virtually no system out there is going to be identical to mine. So I'm going to give you the key points and some of the good takeaways that you can get from my system that hopefully you can apply to yours. All right, so I'm going to show you guys real quick how my system is set up, and then I'm going to go back and I'll show you some of the key points you may want to keep in mind when you're designing your own system. So what I'm doing, I'm coming out of the air compressor through a 5-micron filter, through this whip hose, which isolates the vibration from the compressor, into this cooling manifold. I'm going to shoot a video on this as well. I'll have a card up in the corner and a link in the description if you want to check it out. Anyway, come out of that cooling coil into another regulator with another 5-micron filter. From there, I've got an outlet here, which I'm eventually going to use for a sandblaster, and this pipe here actually runs up the wall and into the shop. So my system then comes through the wall, through this regulator, and into this T with the drip leg. The T then goes vertical up over the door. So once it comes up over the door, I've got a drip leg just before my T running to my air line, and my air hose, the filter that I have up there is a 0.5-micron filter. From there, it's going to go all the way down to the end where it goes into the other bay. Alright, so I'm coming through the wall over to another drip leg, just because the pipe goes vertically there for that short span just to catch any moisture, and comes across the top of the garage door and terminates here down at the end with another quick connect fitting. I haven't mounted the hose reel yet. This one is just basically for airing up tires and things like that, just so I don't have to pull the car into the other bay. But it has the same 0.5-micron filter that the opposite side does on that hose reel as well. So for your guys' system, a couple things you need to take away from this. Anywhere you go vertical, it's a very good idea to put a drip leg on the bottom, simply because what's going to happen is as that air goes up, it's going to cool down and condense and create water. Well, if you put a regular 90 here, that water has nowhere to go except for back into your regulator. So by putting a T in, it gives that water a place to trap to. Put a ball valve on the bottom, you can bleed all that water right out of the system. This is the one area in my system when I didn't really follow my own advice. Simply because if I moved this vertical pipe any further to the right, I was going to run right into the outlet. So this pipe basically had to go here, and I didn't have enough room for the drip leg before the vertical. So it's after, it'll catch it before it goes into the sandblaster, but like I said, ideally that's how you do things. It doesn't always work out that way. So if you guys want to run a line down your wall for like an air outlet or something like that, the right way to do that is actually run a T up to a 90 over to a 90 down to another 90 in to another 90 down. The reason you do that is water won't go uphill. So your line going down the wall will stay much drier than what it would be if you just put a T in and ran it directly down the wall. I understand that costs a lot in fittings, but if dry air is really, really important to you, it's something worth probably doing. Me personally, I'm probably just going to run a T straight down just like this to an air chuck and then just put a drip leg on the bottom below the air chuck. But I figured I'd show you guys that just in case some of you guys were interested. All right guys, so that is my system. Like I said, my system will vary from your system, I'm sure. I did it this way because, like I told you, it was cheaper. A Max Line kit, which is like a flexible aluminum piping kit through Rapid Air, with all the fittings that I needed, and the 100-foot 3/4 kit cost me $374.83, and a Fast Pipe kit, which is their rigid aluminum, that kit would have cost me $503.39. I put this kit in copper for less than 250 bucks. So if you have a lot of twists and turns, I would definitely recommend copper and Sharkbite fittings. I've had no issue with the Sharkbite fittings at all. So they're rated for this sort of pressure. They're rated for 200 degrees and 200 PSI, like I said before. So it's more than what you're gonna see in any sort of home DIY air setup. So if you guys aren't familiar, the fittings simply just push together, and once you push them in, you're done, that's it. They do make a release tool to be able to get them apart, but I found a pair of channel locks works just as well as like the $5 piece of C-shaped plastic that they sell. So if you guys have suggestions for my system, what style of piping you should run, anything like that, put it down in the comments so other people can try and benefit from some of your information. With that, if you guys like the video, hit like. If you want to see more content, hit subscribe. Thanks for watching.